Was that fun? That was Karen Drucker. That's a money champ. And I wanted to go into a little bit about the brain waves and fields of consciousness and why it's so important with the one coming now. At the time of this recording, most of the people that are on the seminar have had a chance to work with me. Excuse me, I want to change my glasses so I can be on the computer. There we go. And I'm going to actually switch over to this mode too. There we go. In the one command, we actually are retraining your brain. And what we're doing is we're motor driving the brain and the mind to do what it naturally does. When people are able to achieve these extraordinary levels of consciousness, strength, abilities, awareness, there are particular steps that they all go through. And we have uncovered those ways to motor drive the brain into those steps and how to kind of turn on these different levels of consciousness. And we just want to share with you why the theta brainwave and what quantum thinking and theta all have in common. Our brainwaves reflect the many dimensions of who we are. Now, just think about in your ordinary life all the different roles that you play. I mean, you may be a parent, you may be a spouse, you're someone's child, you're an employee or a business owner, you're a service provider, you're a neighbor, you're a person in a community. And depending on the relationships is really another aspect of who you are. If you go to a checkout, if you go to the grocery store, there you may be a customer, but to the cashier you may be a regular. Hopefully you're that sweet regular that comes in all the time. Hopefully you're not that one that's causing her problems. But you're someone's favorite. You're some guy in traffic that cut him off. You're that sweet person that let him in. There's all these aspects of who you are, and I think you also can kind of tell that. And I want to kind of keep this first, just in a relational piece, that there's some people that when you meet them, you just want to cooperate with them. You just want to help them, and somehow the very best part of who you are kind of just shows up, and you may actually even, it may be so unusual the way you're acting with that person that it kind of like jolts you a little bit, going, I wonder how I can be this way with this person and not like this all the time. Or maybe there's someone also who brings up that some of your worst qualities, and so they're in relationship with the worst part of themselves, and so they get into relationship with the worst part of you, and then you notice that you're acting and feeling a different way. Well, every cell that you have has its own intelligence. Your organs have intelligence, like the collection of cells that make your organs. There's your body that has its own intelligence. I mean, your body actually operates as a collective, and there's this kind of collective conversation that's happening all the time. Then there's the energy body. Then we might even go into your higher self. But then we could go into different expressions. There's, we talked about in employee and business and child. But then when there is let's say there's a wound or a trauma, then there's a part of you that's unresolved, that's broken, that's wounded. And that part of you is needing to get some help and support. And we have these things called memories. And so these memories start coming up, positive or negative, just the same. But we'll have these start coming up, and then we don't know how to deal with it, so we think we will push it down, or we circulate on it, trying to ask ourselves why. Or we tell the story over and over again about our wounding, not realizing that that story re-wounds us. So we have all of these pieces, and they're all kept, they're all kind of expressed at different waves and vibrations, okay? And those different waves and vibrations are measured in hertz, and those are radio waves. And those are actually how they measure brain waves. Now let me look at this slide real quick. So what are brain waves? The brain waves are frequencies of electrical energy that the brain produces, and they originate from the cerebral cortex, but they include the activities in other parts of the brain that influence the cortex by the operation and care of our body and our intelligence and our emotional thinking. The electrical charge of the brain's activity is measured in hertz, and the higher the number of the hertz, which is the electrical impulses, the faster the operation of our brain. Now, our brain is also divided into two parts. We have and we'll say for most normally organized people that when we talk about left brain thinking, we're being more sequential. There's strategies, and we have histories, and we think of time as being linear. And then this is, like all of our counting abilities and language and different things are held in there. And then the right side is more of the emotional, creative, expressive brain. Then we have, the frontal lobe where we're tracking and making sense of everything. And a lot of our beliefs and programs are stored there in the frontal lobe of the brain. And during the course of our time together, you may actually hear me say, massage your forehead. If as you make a change, I want you to massage your forehead in a circular way. I've just noticed that this seems to relieve the pressure of what's happening at the front of the brain, because there's suddenly a new rush of blood, and bringing in support of the new programming taking place. I got a little image here for you. This is me at a talk a couple of years ago, and I'm actually looking through my fist playing telescope there. And this is how we are mostly meeting the world. And so I want to encourage you to look through that little telescope. And as you're looking through, it's amazing to, it's kind of funny, because when you first kind of look through it, first you're aware of everything that you're not seeing, but then if you focus on any one thing, it actually brings it into greater clarity. Okay, well, this is your brain on beta. We actually have 4 brain waves, but I want you to think about something. The reason I use this illustration is because in your normal everyday waking experience, there's billions of bits of information to process that we're tracking. And we have what Asara calls a sphere of influence that goes with that vibration, as far as like our ability to get information and make meaning. And when we're on beta, which is the shortest, it's 13 to 40 hertz. It's very tight pulses. We're operating again in that frontal lobe. It is making decisions based on decisions that we made in the past, based on past parameters, okay? And everything that does not match what has been programmed into it, because it does what's called generalization. And so it makes up rules that say every time, everyone, everything, always, never. And when we are using that kind of language, then we're actually turning parts of our mind on and off. We're turning on and off our own DNA with the spoken word. And we are programming ourselves just through our regular, normal language. But also, we have this emotional match of wanting to avoid pain or gain pleasure. And so it goes on the search for everything that's the match, and it filters out everything else. So when I say, come back to this picture of this is your brain on beta, well, this is you deleting everything that does not match your own inner reality. And let's say that you are looking for some help or support, and you look around and somehow it doesn't come into the view of that little teeny dot of light that you're looking through. But then if you find somebody who looks remotely familiar to someone in the past who hurt you, I mean, the least little bit similar to someone who hurt you in the past, you will reject them just because they look similar. The mind is such a funny thing, and you have to catch yourself on this. Okay, so you're going to start becoming more aware of it and start asking yourself, is this true? Is this true now? Yeah, that happened before, but I'm not 3 years old or 5 years old, or I'm not 17 anymore. I'm a powerful adult now. What do I know now that I didn't know before? So we're actually going to be doing that. Well, we're spending an awful lot of time in this beta. And what happens is it's our least resourceful state. I mean, it's associated with worry and stress, fear, irritability, moodiness, anger. And if we operate here too much, this actually starts to damage our health. Now, there are times that this is good, just like when we said that super focused time, and we need to be linear, and we need to do math and all of that. There are times that it's good. But it's like kind of walking around with one arm and one foot tied up. It's harder. You're probably familiar with alpha, because when we go into hypnosis or Reiki or get a massage or we're watching television, we naturally go into more of an alpha state and we start to meditate and relax. And this is that feeling of you kind of getting some vivid imagery just before you drift off to sleep. So you start imagining or thinking, or you're having reverie. And this is associated with effortless creativity and very powerful memory, super learning. It's very harmonious and peaceful. This is a really wonderful level of the brain for clearing, for changing habits, leaving fears, releasing phobias. One of my favorite things to do, by the way, the easiest thing to do is to bust a phobia. And I have a fast phobia cure. And if you have got a phobia that's bugging you, give me a call, because I have a technique that busts phobias in less than 30 minutes, and sometimes as in little as 10 minutes. And so if you've got something that heights or airplanes, claustrophobia, public speaking, any of those things, contact me, because I can help you with that. This is one of the easiest things to clear. And it is associated with a sense of tranquility and calm, like when we're meditating. Now, the thing about alpha is that you can equally be influenced positively and negatively through repetition, through symbolism, through ceremony, badges, people who wear uniforms, that type of thing. So, and it's very easy to anchor in, which an anchor is where we have an internal emotional state and an outside physical stimulus, just like when I was having you press on your knee, that's an anchor. It's very easy to anchor in new thoughts, behaviors, and ideas in this state. Going into a deeper state is theta. Now, normally, when you're in theta, it's one of two times. You're asleep, or another time you're in theta is when you're in highway hypnosis. Okay, now we've all had that happen, where you get in the car and you start driving, and then suddenly you realize you've driven 50 miles and you're just kind of waking up and it's time for your exit, and somehow you've avoided all of the trucks and ditches, and you just were able to drive. You went on autopilot, but your mind was completely someplace else. That is your mind in theta. Elmer, I'm very sorry, the person, now I can't even think of his name, but he was with the Messenger Institute, and when he measured people who had a lot of theta activity and started taking people into the theta state, when he was doing voluntary controls and first introducing biofeedback, he noticed that theta was one of the best brain waves for dealing with deep emotional problems. If people could simply go into that theta state, there was this very heightened sense of well-being. It feels a little floaty. You feel very calm, and you just feel a greater sense of connection to others. What we've also noticed working with this is that when we go into theta, the solution to a problem that we have actually seems to have it seems to have more good, serve a greater purpose, and it's usually a win-win. And in the six-step process, I want to talk to you a little bit about that because we spend time aligning to our heart, and the Heart Math Institute actually talks about this, that this takes us into coherence. And so there's a brain wave associated in three neurological centers of your brain, and the heart is very much operating in theta. Okay, so when we're connecting that heart with our mind, we're actually tapping into our deepest and truest hopes, wishes, and desires, and it somehow comes up with a solution that is a win-win, and there's no exclusion in this. It's the rule becomes, if it work, if it works for us to come to an agreement, it has to work for both of us. And so if it's right for me, it's going to be right for you too. It's not an either or thing. When we're up in beta, it's you or me, buddy. But when we're in theta, it's us. We can find a solution, and it naturally arrives. Okay. Next, we have delta, which is normally related to our deep sleep state. It's deep restorative sleep too. Now, I want to talk a little bit about these spheres of influence, because this is a phrase that Asara Lovejoy uses a lot. And she's talking about, in the terms, let's say in terms of problem solving and their effectiveness. I want to give you just a little example of what that would be like. When we're in beta, like right now, I live in the state of Texas, and I know Texans are the only one that thinks Texas is the greatest state there ever was, but you'd have to be from here to really get it. And I don't think it's because we're brain damaged either. I'm just going to tell you. But um, Texans are really proud. We've got this great big state. We've got the space program here. There's a lot of technology, but then we have oil, and then there's a lot of engineering abilities. There's a lot of creative, and so we could just say that beta would be comparable to a sphere of influence that's about the size of the state of Texas. Maybe we might even say it's comparable to a place that might be the size of and population of New York City. Think about what an incredible city, New York is, and it's international, and the intellect, and I mean, it just seems like it's almost the center of the world, that we could say any large city. And so that's beta. Hey, that's a lot of resources. There's technology and strategies, resources, creativity, there's money, there's enough people there to problem solve it. That's pretty awesome. But then if we wanted to go into the sphere of influence about what alpha would be, alpha would take us out into past the Van Allen belt, which is the big magnetic field that surrounds the Earth. Okay, and this keeps all of the sun's radiation from damaging us. And so it's out beyond the edge there, which is pretty amazing. That's an incredible sphere of influence, because that's more than what would encompass the Earth itself. There'd be all of that extra, all of those millions of years of experience. I mean, think about all the bones, everyone that's ever been buried, and all that DNA and all of that information that's lying underneath the earth, and all those hidden riches and treasures. And there's just so much knowledge in the whole planet, but even that we're even just beyond there, and that's alpha. Theta is out beyond the edge of the known universe, out beyond. Now, again, there's galaxies, but out beyond. And when we come out to that outer edge of the universe and all the intelligence and everything that's contained in there, not only are we tapping into everything that exists now, we're tapping into everything that has ever been, and we're tapping into a greater potential. Delta, the sphere of influence, can't even be measured. That's even beyond there. Now, there's one more brainwave I want to introduce you to. I just want to talk about this for a second because it's the gamma brainwave, and this has to do with peak performance and flow. And this operates very, very fast. I mean, if you can look at the squigglies on the chart here, it's a very fast brainwave. And what it has to do with is perception. When we have a new idea come in, what the gamma waves do is they stimulate the neurons in all the different parts of the brain. And in all the different parts of the brain contain all the bits of information about any one thing. So let's just say, we're looking at a computer monitor right now, okay? And as I'm looking at the computer monitor, I'm tracking colors, there's a shape, there's the name of it, there's all the function, there's the history of it, there's not, and then there's my personal history with it. There's all the technology that's built into this. There's everything that I'd have to know and understand that's already been generalized upon just what I guess I've been working with a computer 25 years now. So has it been 25? Yeah, about 25 years now. And so there's all of my generalized experience, but to even what brought us up to where I could, everything that was in my experience has to come up to match this. So the way you would think about that would be if there were to be an alien that landed on the planet that had never seen or heard of a computer, think of everything you'd have to tell them about the computer for them to be even to understand a half of what it is that you know about computers, even if you're not computer savvy. There's information on top of information on top of information, and it becomes little bundles of information that get stored in the morphogenic field. Okay? And it's just like these little packets of knowledge that we have, and all these little packets of knowledge come together, right? And it's all held together with emotion and perception. And perception has to do with our positioning. Are we coming from a position of authority or of weakness, of dominance or victimhood? And in different roles. So when we get new information, it is the gamma waves that bring all the understanding, all the different parts of the brain, bring it all together so that we could actually form the word computer and come to a general understanding about what that means and a general agreement. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, there's a lot that goes into, but all of that information that I just said, and there's even more that I couldn't even think of to tell you that gamma would be tracking, pulling together to bring together into just forming this word that gives us understanding. And this is what the gamma waves does. Now, the times that you have probably experienced the gamma wave has been probably when you've had like an auto accident, if you've ever been in one, or a friend of ours, excuse me, was in a motorcycle accident, and he said as the bike came to stop, he kept flying, and then it felt like it was in slow motion because he could see his bike stop, he could see the gravel, he saw the guardrail, he saw the cars coming, and then he made the decision mid-air, because he was able to track all this, that he needed to tuck and pull his body kind of around to the right. And all of this happened in a couple of seconds. What's happening is the brain is operating so fast when we're in this big traumatic or peak performance experience that it speeds up and our perception of time slows down. It's a pretty amazing thing. And it actually rules our perception of time too. So it's very, very interesting. So I'm actually going to be doing some more teaching around this gamma wave and how we can turn this gamma on and off on purpose. When we work with theta, by the way, when we take you up in the 6 steps in the process of the one command, we actually are taking you through all of the brain waves, starting with coming into beta first. Then as we're going through the steps and we're making the statement of the one command, you're actually starting to lower. Now, the minute that you have rolled your eyes up, you are going up into theta, but you're kind of in an alpha theta state. But then once you state the one command and you allow yourself to expand, then you're going into that theta delta. Now what happens is we go out to the edge of where we find the answer of our information. We don't know where that is, but I just know that the way I experience it is there's this expansive feeling that goes out, and then there's this snapback, and it's like the information's getting carried back in. Then the brain waves start coming back into higher, faster frequencies, and for a second it flashes into gamma, then we come back down into beta. Okay, so we're actually taking you into these brain waves on purpose by setting out these sheets of paper, teaching you how to go through these steps, anchoring you in, using your eyes. So I'm giving you some clues on how we do this. Then this forming of this very particular statement that you're going to be doing. By consciously going into that theta brain state, we recover the knowledge of our own greatness. And the way that people experience it's like, gosh, I always had the answer. I was a good person. We had Jaziana on the phone. You'll be hearing her in another recording where she was, her initial story was about how her parents wouldn't give her any allowance. She wanted money. She wanted to be able to get some things. So at age 8, she started playing piano at church because her parents weren't going to give her allowance. She didn't accept that answer. And so here at 8 years old, she's earning $2 a week playing piano at church, and then she started finding out other ways to make money. I thought, wow, what a powerful kid you are that you would not accept that answer of no, you don't get to have money. You took action and you did that. That must feel amazing. And she said until she had gone into theta, she had not really ever thought of it that way. Up until then, it had been a pain story for her. So as we go up in there and we connect to that greatness and that knowledge of our own greatness, we start dissolving these frozen particles of memories that we call our beliefs and the identity we associate with those moments as our limitations, leaving us open to our true potential. Now, I want to come back to that for a second, that identity we associate with those moments as our limitations. I mean, that's a interesting way to say that, but the identity of who you were, of not enough, or the one who was hurt. Remember all those dimensions of self? Well, there's a frozen part of you that was not good enough, that wasn't worthy, that was hurt or in pain. And the limitation of that identifying yourself that way is causing you pain today. So when we allow that to be dissolved, when we meet that in love and compassion, we begin to create for ourselves what we need, then that gives us more confidence and true freedom. I mean, no one can ever let you down again because you'll be 100% in charge of your inner reality and your outer experience. Isn't that great? So as a natural consequence, your blueprint for success simply arises to the surface. Now we've got some effects of the theta state. And I'm just going to leave it on the screen here for just a second because there are so many, and this is in your manual, but there's deep level of healing and regeneration of the body. You recapture a strong and vivid sense of self, of well-being, increased sense of love for self and others. I'm going to warn you right now, when we're in theta a lot, I get theta drunk, and I just fall in love with everybody. And I was like, I just love you so much. You're just wonderful. It is wonderful us be together. That's me. I just start falling in love with everybody. Want us all to come live together. Take picnics together. But then unheard and unseen things become to the conscious awareness. So your intuition and your inner knowing, even though you might not necessarily know how you know, starts coming into your conscious awareness. Ideas start springing forth and intuitive resources rather than deductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning, there's nothing wrong with that. I really admire that, and there's times that we use that. But the problem with deductive reasoning is, it's the same problem with philosophy. It You can prove anything wrong. You can prove that anything doesn't exist. It's just an argument. But you can allow this truth that's inside of you to begin to express. You're going to start all of these internal experiences from your past, maybe some that were painful or blank or that you just didn't feel good about, that you've been trying to cut off and ignore. Those start getting integrated, and it kind of starts becoming kind of who you are, and there's a freedom in, even though there was pain, it's not a limitation. I mean, I was talking to someone about the web page, and I said, um, it never occurred to me not to talk about being a bedwetter, but it was something that for many, many years I didn't talk about because I was really embarrassed. It wasn't just something that happened when I was, like an adolescent, like 8 or 9 years old. This actually was a really damaging thing in my life because it was really heavy until I was like up until 17 years old. And then I would still have accidents. But my last accident, I was 21 and married. And I was completely humiliated. I didn't sleep for the first 3 weeks of being married because I was afraid of wetting the bed. I mean, this was a big defining thing. But once that last piece got integrated, it was just a piece of my experience that made me stronger and actually gave me more compassion for people. And it kind of set me up to have a supernatural acceptance and what was, it kind of helped me understand why I was always naturally excluding myself. So I was able to meet that and start including myself. So we all have those things like that. We always have that thing that made us not feel good enough or judged, that we had to keep secret. Maybe there was something in our family programming. Maybe there was alcoholism or some type of abuse, and we weren't allowed to talk about it. Well, this actually starts bringing that up and out in a way that is so empowering without having to really spend a lot of time going into it. It's so fast. And then improvements with in relationships with yourself and others, you're just emotionally healthier. I want to just kind of take a pause there, give you a second to stretch for a second. Oh, that was the slide I wanted. We'll have more flexibility in your thinking, reasoning, reacting, increased connection, more self-acceptance, increased creativity, and new ideas and problem solving. Then you're going to be having some um, really letting yourself go and hypnagogic images where you are in a fully engaged experience of, we'll call it a vision, and where you feel transported. And these reveries and fantasies can start coming in with a lot of visual and a lot of, there's so much information that comes in. And earlier in the conference, I told the story that kind of spontaneously, when I was meditating on what did I really want to create? What level of wealth did I want to create? How did I want to live my life? And one thing that I didn't even realize that I wanted to do was go back to my old elementary school, Rufus Burleson Elementary in Dallas. I loved that school, and they had this incredible art program there with the music and the art program itself. And in those two rooms, I've really got to have a lot of freedom, and there was beauty. a bunch of little redneck kids, and we get to get exposed to culture and some higher ideals. And that school, even though it was in a poor white working class neighborhood, very much blue collar, there was so much respect. There was order, and I it was one of the few places I got to go all the way through. Once I started getting older, we had kind of a chaotic time because there was a lot of moving around. In fact, in my senior year, I went to 4 different high schools. I didn't get to have the bonding with people. But those experiences at that school were were so amazing. School was such a safe place for me, and I'm with the art, the art especially. And so I'm in this reverie, and I'm thinking about how I would love to make a big, meaningful endowment to the art program there, just so that they could get even half of what I got out of it. And suddenly I'm like transported, and I'm giving a speech, and it's the big day of giving the check, and it's not really about me. It's just like this big experience of love, and I get to really tell this school what it meant to me and the people there. And inside of that dream or that reverie were a lot of the clues to my success and a lot of my truest hopes, wishes, and desires. And it even expanded my sense of appreciation for the different things that I have got to experience in my life and connect in from joy to joy to joy, from appreciation to appreciation to appreciation, rather than my old way of thinking and being was from pain to pain to pain. One painful memory on top of another, one humiliation, one loss after another. That's how I used to talk about my life. Now it's a story of triumph and joy. And there's funny stuff that happens. And you're going to find that you're just have a lot more tolerance. And there's just everything seems to be working together for one idea, and that's to bring about success for you. So what is the one command, and what is exactly? So it's more than positive thoughts and affirmations. It takes place in your extraordinary intelligence, and right there in your theta brainwave, you're delinking your neurology and you're making a biological change. Now remember when we did that little piece with your 2 fingers? Well, right then, that was one way that we delinked your neurology, how you're running your program. Because when we have a thought, it is not up in our head. We think we're up in our head, but it's really is, it's communicating with every cell and fiber of our being, and our body is communicating back to us. Because what happens is when we have an emotion, it floods our body with chemicals. Then there are these neural receptors and transmitters, and they all get hooked up for these chemicals. And then when the chemicals aren't flowing, the neurotransmitters and receptors start screaming, just like if you ever tried to stop smoking or drinking. If you ever tried to take yourself off of sugar, it was your neurology that was screaming. Well, it's the same thing if you try to give up worry or doubt or fear, or you try to give up that family programming. This is running along specific neural pathways all the way through your body. And as long as that link is in place, if you do not complete the cycle, what happens is pain, actually. And then even when you come to the end of the cycle, and even if that means it's collapse or loss or another block, what happens? There's actually an endorphin rush that happens because then the body's flooded with the chemicals, and then there's almost a relief. Have you ever noticed that sometimes in a big loss, you just feel your body letting go, letting down? Yeah, that's because all that tension that you were holding. That's your neurology. And with the one command, you actually create something new. So right now is a great spot for you to take a break. What you're going to do is you're just going to pause the recording here, go stretch out, walk around, and we're going to take you through the three parts of the one command. And then I'm going to take you into formatting the command in another video. But I think that this is probably going to be about enough information once I take you through how to format the right command. Then we'll take you into doing some exercises in another video. So let's take a little break, go get a drink of water, make a pit stop, and we will see you soon. Okay, we're back. So the one command is a particular statement that is matched with going, motor driving your brain, going into, taking it into the theta brainwave. Now, the way this statement came around was Asara Lovejoy, who has been a consciousness educator for more years than I'm allowed to say at this point. We always say that she started very young. Had actually been a student of prosperity for many years, and she had had times in her life that she had had a lot of money, and then something would happen and she would lose her money. She's actually been a millionaire a few times over, and then had lost it. And the last time that she had really made some great money was when she was in Southern California, and I'd actually been her partner down there for a time, and she was on the radio. And she was performing on a Clear Channel station. At one point, she was on 3 different radio stations in Southern California, had a very large following, and had a lot of clients. And then her mother got ill, and so she took time from her career, shut down her office, and started taking care of her mother until she passed away. Part of what happened was she got an inheritance from that, and Asara made the decision that she finally wanted to fulfill her dream of moving to beautiful Whidbey Island, Washington, and start a retreat center there. She had dreamed of that for a lot of years, and so she took all of this money that was part of her savings and the money from her inheritance and went in search of finding a little property that that would be hers. Well, she found the perfect place, but the house just needed a little fixing up. Well, 2 years later, and a renovation that is still not finished, Asara has gone through the entire inheritance with the purchase of the property, the renovations, the changes. There was just a lot of problems on this because she hadn't hired an architect. She she just kind of went through and making changes and changing rooms around, and really just wound up in a really bad situation. And in order to finish the renovation, she had to take out a mortgage, in fact. So here's Asara, who at one point had quite a bit of money, and here now she's facing having a very large mortgage payment, and she doesn't have a regular job, and she hasn't had to work in a few years, and she's 60 plus at this point, and it's not like she can go to work at Kelly Girl, because they'll make you take a typing test. I mean, once you have been a radio personality, this was your job, and she gave speeches, she had coaching clients, she just had this really kind of eclectic, interesting career, public appearances, that type of thing. She was kind of a minor celebrity down in the area. She'd owned a state licensed vocational school teaching hypnotherapy, Reiki. She had a full 2-year program there. Before that, she had a very successful massage business and Reiki practice. And then before that, she'd actually owned her own RV business, and she'd been an RV salesman before that. And then before that, she'd been um, a, a stay-at-home mom, taking care of her children. And before that, she was married to a millionaire. So with that kind of history, it's not like you just go get a job and the kind of job you get might not be the right one. And so she was like going, what am I going to do? She's laying in bed at night going, even if I got a job, on the island where she's living, that might pay $10 an hour. That is not going to cover this mortgage. What am I going to do? And so she said she'd spent the whole night laying in bed just shaking under the covers. She's to the point she just thought, I just want to die. I just want to leave the planet. I can't handle this. And she was mad at herself. She said, I've studied this stuff for years. I've had students. I've helped people make money. Why can't I make my own money? And what is this pattern of attempt, achieve, defeat that's going on over and over? And so she was just racking her brain trying to figure out how to save this house that had literally taken her last cent. And really, it was the last of what she had from her parents. And she got up in the morning and she just didn't even know how she was going to face the day. And finally, she just collapsed. And she just said these words, I don't know how I saved my home. I only know I'm saving this house. That's all there is to it. And just making that statement, she noticed she felt immediately calmer and at peace. Then she started kind of thinking about it. And she, years earlier, she had worked with someone who had taught her how to go into theta brainwave. And so she was doing some clearing and going up and saying, I want to, I want to create and manifest this, and I want to clear whatever these programs were. And while she was up there, she kind of ran out of ideas about what to say. When I say up there, when her eyes were rolled up and she's up in the theta state of mind, she realized she didn't really know what to ask for or think about next. So she just said again, I don't know how. I saved my home. I only know my home is safe. I don't know how. I pay these bills. I only know everything is paid in full now. And then this state of just fulfillment and satisfaction, she just felt herself naturally expanding. Then she came back down and into her body and relaxed, and she realized she wasn't worried anymore. She just felt peaceful, felt calm, felt happy. And that really got our attention because the next day she got the idea to rent her house out. She thought if I could rent my house out, then I could maybe earn enough that on the above the mortgage to pay for a smaller house, and let me start working. Let me see if I can generate some business. And so she went to a realtor and was told him about her house. It's a 4,800 square foot house on Woodby Island. It's 5 bedrooms. I think there's 4 bathrooms. It's on a couple of acres. You can see the ocean. It's just beautiful. It's just amazing when you go to this house. And they said, well, houses on Woodby don't rent for very much. You can get 1,400. How much do you want? I saw her needed 35. They said they laughed at her. Said you'll never get it. And she said, well, then you're not my realtor. And she knew, and so many times people will accept what they're told and try to fight it. But what she did, she said, no, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to find another solution. So she went back home and she just said, well, she wasn't worried about it. She knew it was going to be taken care of, even though the deadline was bearing down on her on how to pay that mortgage. Someone, she was telling someone about what her situation was, what she decided to do, and they said, have you posted it on Craigslist yet? She said, what's a Craigslist? They came out to the house, they took some pictures, posted the house. The next day, the house was rented for the full 3,500. By the way, people from Texas, not me. They paid for a year in advance. They paid a big deposit. They thought it was a great deal. And she was able to take that money, set aside the money for her mortgage. She went and got another house. And then about that time, I was living in Texas, and I just happened to call her because there was a group that was interested in one of the classes that she taught. And I asked her if she was teaching. And I wasn't able to go. And she said, well, yes. Well, it turned out there were 18 students there. And that money took her through the next 6 months. And that one class, that was this little suggestion, wound up actually generating over $250,000 of income for her over the next year and a half. because of everything that happened directly as a result of that class. Oh, man, I've got to ask her for I've got to ask her for my referral on that. That was pretty good. How did that happen? That happened because one, the statement, the three parts of the one command. But then she connected into that greater capacity that knew the answer. And it expanded it out into a greater possibility. And it allowed the answer to arrive. So there's three parts to the one command. It starts out with I don't know how, and then we state positively what we want. So I don't know how my bills are paid in full. I don't know how my mortgage is paid. I don't know how I have a satisfying career. I don't know how I get to work on time. I only know it is so now, which is the second part. The third part is I am fulfilled. Now, this I only know it is so now is because in the unconscious mind right now, it is now o'clock. Right now is now, even when we have a memory, when we're projecting something and imagining, time we're thinking about it is now. In the unconscious mind, all time is now. And I want you to remember that. And then we're bringing in this state of fulfillment and joy. The reason that this is important is because so often we defer our happiness and joy until we get what we want. I can't be happy until I know this problem's solved. But what if it's just as true that if you were walking around in the state of fulfillment, joy, and happiness, it'd be easier to solve the problem. But also, we are creating the internal state that we want to experience with our manifestation so that we have a new positive match. Okay, so that's a very simple one. And so I just want you to think about something. We're going to try this statement out. Just using that very first part of I don't know how. I want you to think about something that you want to manifest or create, but you're not sure how you're going to do it. You've been a little worried about it. You need to create it. Okay, so now I want you to go ahead and state out loud, I don't know how. What happened? Probably just kind of went away. Try to find that thought now. Can you find it? No, it's gone. That's because when we've said I don't know how, we're actually speaking to two parts of the brain at the same time. If you have ever done affirmations or anything, you probably heard it said, Catherine, don't say don't. We never say don't because the unconscious mind don't hear don't. And you're right, it doesn't. So we're actually speaking first to the conscious mind that's saying, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We got to do this. We got to figure it out. But we say, well, we don't know how to do this. Well, immediately that causes us to stop and it says, oh, well, if you don't know how, we've got to go find someone who does. And it already sends your mind on a search for a solution to arrive, which connects back to that reticular activating system. Then it's also speaking to the part of you that doesn't hear the don't, and it's saying, I know how. Because, yeah, I know how. How do I know this? And then it starts connecting into the part of you that already knows. So there is a wrong way of doing the one command. And just here's one little example of it. I don't know how I will, and then state what you want, but I only know it so now, and I am fulfilled. Will is it's more of like a placeholder. It defers thing. It doesn't really give you what it is that you want. You must make a decision now about what you want now, clearly. If you want to double your income, I don't know how I double my income. I only know my income is double now, and I am fulfilled. Now what I did is I did a little kind of flip back and forth. I don't know how it is. I only know it is now. And for me, that works that way. And we're going to talk about some of the ways you use the one command. The other thing is that we don't want to use the word but because it actually cuts the energy and it actually brings you inadvertently into a negative limited state. So when you are using the word but, use it on purpose. I always say, if you're going to say but, you have a great big but. And here's the example of that. I want to make a statement two different ways and notice how it feels and notice what your impression is both ways. Mary is a sweet, lovely girl, but she has trouble getting to work on time and she's always borrowing my stapler. Mary has trouble getting to work on time sometimes and she's always borrowing my stapler, but she is a sweet, lovely girl. Which Mary do you want to know? Right, because the first one separated, the second one included, because it is a more positive state. Next, we couple this statement with the 6 steps to theta, which is actually, for the first time that we teach you, we actually lay out sheets of paper, or I do recommend that there's a couple of ways you can do it. If it's too hard to lay out the sheets of paper, I've actually taped the sheets of paper to the wall. But these 6 steps are the steps that every person is able to go into extraordinary levels of their mind power, go into expanded states of awareness, actually go through these steps. The first one is ground. When we're talking about grounding, we're connecting into here and now. Our mind is rushing off to the future, and mentally, and emotionally, we're living in the past. But when we ground, we're bringing ourselves into here and now, to the resources and the answers that are here now. Eckhart Tolle talks about that in the power of now. And if you just went into spending time in this grounding state, you would find that you were calmer, more peaceful, and to have a greater sense of awareness and acceptance. Second is align. We're bringing you into your heart, connecting into the wisdom of your heart, but then we're also aligning you to your purpose. Now, we have different purposes, we have different things that we want to create, but we're really coming into the greater good that would come from the result of this experience. Next, we have you go up to theta, which means when we say do that, we have you close your eyes, roll your eyes up, and we have you picture, visualize, or imagine that you're traveling up a golden pole of light, and the higher you go, the faster you go. Then you're breaking through the darkness. You're breaking through, and when they have tracked the people who are going out into those extraordinary states, there's this moment that they feel like there's a resistance that they're having to push up against it, and then finally they break through, and that means they're going beyond their boundaries, and they're going to get a new answer. Then we have you state the one command. Now, when we have you state the one command, we have you state it silently to yourself. Next is expand. That's when we let that idea go and we are instructing our unconscious mind to go on a search for the answer. And then we are instructing it to find a solution that serves more good in its fulfillment. Finally, we receive. So I just want to walk you back through some of these steps where we ground, and the imagery that we use is we actually have you imagine that you're like a tree with long roots connecting down into the earth. Then we have you bring your attention to your heart, and we're actually guiding your eyes too, because when we have you ground, we have you look down, then we have you focus on your heart as you come into alignment. Then we have you close your eyes, roll your eyes up as if you're trying to look up to the top of your head, and we have you imagine that you're going up a pole of light. Now you are actually staying in your body, but you're moving yourself into a position of being an observer so that you can get new information. Then we have you break through the darkness into the light, because we're having you go into the black void of space, breaking through, coming into that white luminescence of pure potential, which is that step in between go up to theta and state the one command. Finally, when you state the one command, you do state it silently, state it positively, and what will happen too is you may wind up having another thought come up behind there, and you actually make all the commands we call them considerations or objections. So while you're learning it, you're making one command, coming back down, and then going back up again. But what you notice is another thought comes behind it. So if you say, well, I don't know how I have a new job, I only know I have a new job now. Then the thought comes up and says, I don't want any job, I want a great job. So then you would make the correction, I don't know how. I have a great job that I really love. Then your mind goes, I want a great job, but could we have it closer to the house? Because I'm tired of being further, having to do all the commuting. So I don't know how I have a great job that's close by and it has great pay. I only know I do now. So you'll actually do some stacking like that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Then we expand out to an idea even greater that serves more good in its fulfillment. And that's nothing for you to do here. You're simply allowing that idea to go out, find the solution, then finally you allow yourself to receive. As you start to receive, we talked to you a little bit about receiving and unwinding and letting all that old neurology go and release. And Asara had actually seen in her mind's eye, she could see all the little DNA strands unwinding, which I see that too. And then the neurological pathways, and that's what we're speaking to. There's nothing for you to unwind. We're mostly creating space for you to be able to allow that to come in and then finally integrate. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? So I want you to think about, we're going to do a little meditation. I want you to think about something that you would like to create. It may be more money, it may be a better job, it may be the ability to retire. But I want you to simply come up with a very simple command, like I don't know how I increase my income. I don't know how I decrease my debt. I don't know how I have new clients. Whatever it is, I want you to just make it very simple. And then I'm going to walk you up through the 6 steps. Okay, I'm going to take you right up through this process of the one command, just so you can experience for yourself. Now, what I'm going to have you do is you're going to have this recording, and if you have the ability to print out those papers and step on them, either on the ground or put them on the wall, or maybe just stand up at where your computer is and take one step to the left as you're doing this, then you're going to get a greater experience of this, and we really recommend that you do this twice. Now, I do want to make a note here that when you lay out your papers, it does not matter if you lay out your papers left to right or right to left. It's a completely personal preference. That's all you need to do. Okay? All right. So now we're going to go back up. Let me just rewind back up here. And right now, though, before you lay out your papers, let's just go ahead and go through this process together. Just let yourself settle in, and whether you're on the papers or sitting down, this is a preference right now. Allow yourself to ground. Imagine that you're like a tree and you have long roots going deep down into the earth. Feel your connection to the earth and feel the earth's connection to you. Bring up that beautiful, loving earth energy, bringing your attention to your heart and that love in your heart as you come into alignment. And just let that love in your heart become illuminated and let that expand 360 degrees around you. Now with your eyes closed, roll your eyes up. Picture, visualize, or imagine that you are traveling up a golden pole of light, and the higher you go, the faster you go. And soon you find yourself surrounded by that beautiful black void of space. Break through the darkness into the light. Come into that white luminescence of pure potential. Eyes up. Silently make your statement for your command. I don't know how I can state what it is that you want. I only know that it is so now, and I am fulfilled. Now, allow that idea to expand to an idea even greater that serves more good in its fulfillment. Then, when you're ready, just allow that to begin to receive and just start to receive in gratitude. And then, as this new state of being begins to arrive, just allow it to unwind, unwind, unwind. Then we're going to rewind, 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 and integrate. Very good. Okay, this is going to bring this portion to an end. What we're going to be doing is there is a demonstration that I'm doing with Amparo that's on the membership site. You can take a look at that. It was filmed with a camera that was a little too far away. But if you wanted to watch that, then we can do that. And then I can actually see if I can get another recording in for you. In fact, I'll go ahead and do this. And then you have a handout in your in your manual. There's an exercise that you're going through the one command process 2 times. This is a little homework piece for you, and you can do it by yourself or with a partner. You're going to form a command, and you're going to go through the 6-step process 2 different times using the same command. And then once you do this, I want you to just notice how it felt the second time you did it. Now, normally when you do a one command, you do it once. And it's not only do it once or you're going to like lose it, but we're going to answer some of those common questions about the one command and how many times you form it and what's the right command and what to expect in that time in between, okay? But right now, I want you to focus on doing this class exercise that's in your manual. And then we'll be coming back and then we'll be starting the next section. So this ends the first part of the morning's recording. Then we have everything up there now that is through the end of the day for day 1, and then we are going to be adding some more pieces, so keep an eye out on the membership. All right, well, thank you so much. This is Catherine Perry. And I am just so blessed to be in your presence. And then in the next session, we will be getting your questions. So until next time.